Hello, thanks for joining me in this short video. If you remember in the last video, what we talked about was the principal problem for the native English learner learning a foreign language such as Spanish. What we said was that was principally the problem of the grammar, in particular the issue of gender, which is attached to the nouns, and the verb conjugation. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to show you how we at Salamanca House can help you take on this problem of the complexity of Spanish grammar for the English learner. Okay, so first of all, before we start, I'd just like to introduce you to this diagram, which is a very sort of schematic representation of your learning program. So those of you that are starting at beginners, we're going to be going fairly slowly to start off with, and then we're going to start going up a kind of quite a steep learning hill. And then what we want to do is get you onto what we call the intermediate plane. That's our aim for every learner that comes to join us at Salamanca House. So what we're aiming at is to get you to a level of what we call A2 in the European Foreign Language Framework. And that is a very reasonable level in which pupils are able to express themselves relatively well in the language that they are learning. So it's a relatively competent level, and then what we will want to do then is to kind of push you on to B1, which is the next level up, which is officially intermediate Spanish. So we'd encourage you to have a look at YouTube so that you get an idea of what we're aiming at, and to have a look at an Instituto de Cervantes delle Oral Exam A2. Just have a look at that and you can see the sort of level that we're aiming at. Okay, so I'd just like to talk a little bit about our methodology, as I say, how we go about teaching you. First of all, every pupil will have a language coach. Now, you may be working with your language coach one-on-one, or you may be two-on-one, or you may be a group of three, for example. Now, our language coaches in general are young people that come from Spain or South America, and we train all of them in the use of our teaching platform, so they are all familiar with this, and they are all familiar with our methodology. So the first key thing is that you're going to need a language coach, and that language coach is going to help you progress along that journey. He or she is going to encourage you and motivate you to get up that hill to where we want you to go, which is onto this intermediate plateau. So the first thing you get is a language coach. The second thing is we're going to give you a very structured and ordered curriculum. This is very important when you're learning to manage all the complexity of the Spanish grammar, which we talked about in the previous video. Okay, so language coach and structured, ordered and focused approach. Okay, so let's have a look at the curriculum that you're going to be following. This is divided into 4 stages. We've got the red, blue, green and purple. Stage 1 is blocks A to E, then Stage 2 blocks F to J, Stage 3 blocks K to O, Stage 4 blocks P to T, and each of those separate blocks consists of about 15 units, and for each block you're going to be given a workbook. So the general idea then is that with your language coach you're going to be completing between 1 and 2 units per lesson. That's what we want to aim at. And that should work out then at about 45 weeks, something like that per stage. So that's the sort of time scale that you're going to be looking at. So what's going to happen in each of your lessons? Well, the first thing is that your language coach is going to do the presentation phase, in which he or she presents the topic of the day. And while that's going on, you're going to be completing the notes in your workbook. And then when that's finished, you get onto the drill phase. And in the drill phase, you're going to drill the topic that's just been presented. So these drills are really important in the learning process. They consist of simple cues or translation tasks which get you talking and which keep you talking. So this pattern is going to repeat itself right the way through the curriculum from block A right the way through to block T, and as you go through this drill system you're going to find that your confidence in speaking the language and listening to the language is going to grow bit by bit. Now with regard to the drills that you do in class, once you've finished the class each week, it's not the end. Okay, your language coach would encourage you to do follow-up activities which mimic the drills and the activities that you've been doing in class. And to do that, you'll need to go to the pupil zone, and that pupil zone actually consists of, at the moment, something like about 10,000 drills in total, which cover the whole curriculum. And we want you to spend each week as much time as you reasonably can practicing these follow-up activities. And it's really important because the more that you practice, the better you're going to get and the more confident you're going to get. Now, you can do the activities on your laptop, or more importantly, you can do them on your mobile phone. So all of these drill activities in the pupil zone are designed to be used on the mobile phone, and that means that you can practice them pretty much wherever you're going. So you can practice them on the bus, going to work, or you can practice them on the train. In fact, you can download the drills onto your mobile phone so that you can use them offline, which means you can practice the drills on the beach or in the middle of the Amazon rainforest if you want to. What we want is for you to practice as much as possible so that you're not just getting that 1 hour class with your language coach, but you're consolidating that activity throughout the whole week by practicing on the pupil zone. I know this might sound a bit cringy, but we've got a phrase that we use which I'd like to remind you of. So it goes something like this. We're going to supply the drill with you. We supply the mechanism, the language coach, the tutor zone, the pupil zone, to get you drilling. And if you do so, you are going to get the skill. It's going to happen. But in order to get that skill, you've got to play your part as well. You've got to supply the will. That's really important. So I see each week who's going on the pupil zone and who's not. And I know that in the last year, some pupils have been on it over 400 times, which is absolutely amazingly fantastic. And that's what we want to see. And we can see the effect of that. Some of you have only been on it 30 or 40 times in the year. But we just want to encourage you to go on the pupil zone, as much as you possibly can, because it's for your benefit to do so. So please try and get on the pupil zone if you can. Try and organise your time so that you're spending 20 or 30 minutes a day doing these activities. So I'd just like to go through the curriculum in the context of verbs. The verbs are the backbone of the grammar, really, and this is one of the really tricky areas for native English speakers who are learning Spanish. Okay, so let's just explain this learning program here in that context. So in block A, you're going to be looking at regular AR, ER and IR verbs, and then in block B, you'll be looking at irregular verbs, reflexive, stem changing, ser and a star auxiliary through to the future verbs. And then in stage 3, things start to toughen up a bit. So that's why we've got you climbing up this hill. I call this past tense mountain. Okay, because the past tenses in Spanish are quite difficult. And so what we want is that by the time you've got through, stage 2 through to block J, that your brain muscles are ready to deal with this. That's why we want you drilling as much as possible. And you're going to need to drill a lot as you're coming up this mountain because it's quite a task. So if we look at the context here, we're going up through what we call the preterite and the imperfect tenses. Those are the two types of past tenses. And then, once we're past that, even as we're climbing up to the top of the hill, we're going to be constantly practicing those tenses over and over again. It's probably a good idea at this point, for some pupils. I know that some of our top group have done this, is to actually go back down a little bit here and recycle this because it is quite tricky. Now they've done this and they're really getting their heads around this now and they're doing really, really well, and it's great to see. So as I said before, the idea of drill, is going to extend right the way through this phase and beyond this. When you're going into the intermediate phase where we're dealing with subjunctive and all this stuff, we're going to be constantly drilling. So drill is the backbone of this learning process. But it's not all about drill. So, for example, as you get into this tricky bit here where you're going to go up the hill, you're dealing with the past tenses. And of course, the past tenses are really important when we want to start conversations with people. In a lot of the conversations that we have, we're talking about what we did yesterday, what we did at Christmas, what we did this morning, and so we're using the past tenses all the time. So as you're going up through the preterite and the imperfect units, you're going to find that the units tend to diversify more. There's not only drill work, but you're also going to be involved in a lot more descriptive work. You're going to be involved in dialogues, role plays, and conversing a lot more. Now, not only do we introduce more conversational activities now as we're going up through stage 3, but we have also started with our top group an activity called the Spanish Cafe. And that is working really well, and it's just amazing to see how well they're doing in this. So what is the Spanish Cafe? Well, the Spanish Cafe is a session that lasts about 40 minutes in which you're working in a group of 3 or 4 with your language coach. And we call it Spanish Cafe because it basically costs the price of a cup of coffee from Costa, quite an expensive cup of coffee, but a cup of coffee nevertheless. All right, so you're talking about, we're looking at about £3.50, I think, something like that, for this session. And it's completely Spanish spoken, so there is no English spoken in this, and the pupils that are going in this, we want them to have that level of competence to be able to go in there and start speaking, to describe things, to say what they did yesterday, to be able to just talk in general, with that confidence. And it's really good and encouraging to see that, our top group, most of who are, if they don't mind me saying so, are, I think, in their 70s. There are 1 or 2 exceptions. It's just amazing to see you've started from scratch and you've got to this stage where you're now conversing openly with your language coach. So as you continue to work through this stage 3 and into stage 4 is when you start to see things happening. You begin to see, yes, I'm getting this now, it's working, it's happening, I'm understanding more, and I'm being able to talk with more confidence. So that's really what I wanted to talk with you about, today, to just show you where we're coming from, where you're going, what our aims are, where we want you to get, and how we're kind of facilitating that so that it will happen. Just as I've said before, it is a simple question of will and determination. So I'd like to finish this video by just saying how proud we are with all of you. We can see that you're all really getting into this in the classes, and most of you in the follow-up zones as well, and that you're all really making a big effort and setting your minds like flint, so to speak, to progress in this task of learning the language. We're so pleased with our top group, who are demonstrating now in the Spanish Cafe that they're able to converse and they're able to start managing the language. And they were a great encouragement, not just for us, but also for all of those that are coming behind them, because as they're able to do it now, you will be able to get there in the not too distant future. So we just want to encourage you now just to keep going. If you've got the will, you will get there. Okay, thank you so much for listening.